Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about, um, what's the best? We're specifically going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about what makes the Dungeons and Dragons rules really special and makes the game really quite separate from from any other D&D then or any other D&D copy games. That really it's a stanchion of separation. So Dungeon Craft did this amazing video that really talked about Dungeons and Dragons as the 800-pound gorilla king, and it's linked below. Check that out. And this is me. I think that video in like 20 minutes said everything I've been trying to say for 2 years in one succinct way. And now I'm going back to his video and just literally commenting on virtually every single one of the. He talked about them as pillars. He had 6 pillars. I'm saying there are 7 stanchions of separation. So we're going to talk deeper about the rules today, right? The rules of Dungeons & Dragons really separate it from the pack. And a lot of people throw a lot of shade at D&D 5e. And it's like, oh, it's not the best game. It really is. And the rules are dramatically good and really spectacular. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about the rules of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So let's get into it specifically. So today I want to talk about scale, advantage, compression. Okay, it's my mnemonic. So first of all, let's talk about the rules of Dungeons & Dragons scale. And it's a big deal, right? So it can scale from 3 different starter boxes, right? You can choose from the Lost Minds of Phandelver starter box. You could choose from the Essentials Kit starter box, which is absolutely amazing. It's a $25 launching pad into Dungeons & Dragons, which is spectacular. You're never going to find a better, simpler. It's going to be hard to find a better, simpler introduction to Dungeons & Dragons. There's literally a new starter box coming out, which is Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. So you're going to have another option for a starter deck, for a starter box. And this is the most simplest version of Dungeons & Dragons, right? Like, hey, let's jump in and let's play. And then also you have a free version online. Dungeons & Dragons Fed's a completely free setting that you can actually, a free, essentially, starter PDF that you can print out or you can play online. You can, just have everybody with their phones or whatever. And so there's just so many ways to start at the bottom. And then it scales all the way up to what I play, right? Full, D&D full. I call it D&D full, right? So I play, hey, welcome to my Dungeons & Dragons game, right? I'm running a campaign. Do you own any of the books, any of the 5e books? Bring them to the table. Whatever you want from them, it's all fresh, available, new. You're not forbidden from any book. You as a player have full access to every single 5th edition canon book. That's D&D full, right? And that's complicated, though, because that's like 35 books. 35 books. Hardbacks, right? And get this, I actually play D&D Full Plus, which is exactly what B. Dave Walters plays. D&D Full Plus. Not only are you welcome to open and have full access to every single book, even if we're running an adventure, you could have the book open and ready to, and reading it as a player. But I also run, you can bring any 1st edition, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition hardback, and anything you find there, I will immediately incorporate into this 3.5 game. You buy a D&D book, and you have access to everything in the book, and we're going to get you there, right? And that is a huge scaling model, right? It's like, hey, you could start at the simplest, like everything fits in this box, and you spent $25 and you're all in, literally dice. You have everything you need, character sheets. You could start D&D at the simplest, $25 launch point, or you can scale up to thousands of dollars. You could be a full-on player and say, hey, I own all 35 hardbacks, and I got a collection of classic D&D games. I'm bringing, okay, these are $50 a piece, right? So if there's 35 of them, let's do that math. That's 500, 500, 500. That's 1,500 if you bought 30 of them. And then there's, yeah. So, it's like $1,750, right? Like, that's a lot of money. So, but it does sound like you can buy all the dungeons. Is that right? Can you buy all? Yeah, that's right. You can buy all the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition hardbacks for less than $2,000, right? But so you could bring $2,000 worth of. So you could you could show up at the table with a $25 starter box, and 5 people can play, or you can have the Dungeon Master with all 35 books, and every player around the table with 35 books. And if you got 5 players and a DM, you got over 10,000 books at the table, $10,000 worth of books at the table. So it scales, and I'm telling you, no other game in the world scales like that. It just doesn't. Like, they all want to, they all pretend like they're D&D, but it ain't real, right? Like, D&D just is at a different level of these other games, right? So it's a stanchion and separation. So that's scale. Let's talk about advantage. Advantage, disadvantage came out and actually a lot of people say, oh, advantage and disadvantage were around before 5th edition. Don't care. And here's why. It didn't matter, right? It's the Netflix issue, right? Yes, Paramount, you made a cool Waco documentary series, right? Or actually a dramatic documentary series. Nobody cared because you put it on your silly little streamer. When it hit on Netflix, millions watched it, right? It blew up and it mattered, right? Advantage and disadvantage may have been around before 5th edition. 5th edition made it matter, and it was and advantage disadvantage is a crazy good mechanic that is very simple to understand, and that really has dramatically speeded the game and given Dungeon Masters the ability to make things feel really super good or feel super bad, and it's narrative and it's logical and it fits. Advantage disadvantage was a major innovation that stepped forward on that arrived on the scene with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? Next, so you have scale, you have advantage, and last you have compression of complexity, right? 3.5, 2, and 1 all were arbitrarily complex at a level that, and 4th edition. Every other edition of Dungeons & Dragons was arbitrarily complex, and 5th edition really delivered compression of complexity. And it is a really big deal, and it's very real in 5th edition. And 5th edition rolls with hard-earned advantages, right? Hard-earned lessons from every single edition. And no game on the planet even has the ability to do this, because no game on the planet can trace their history back to 1974, right? So you're really dealing with this issue where you really have this very special, very unique, special aspect of Dungeons & Dragons, which is that it, D&D 5e is rolling on dubs. It's rolling with brilliant game design straight from Mike Merles, right? A little bit mixed in there with Monty Cook before he got upset and ran off and said, I quit, I'm not going to finish 5th edition with you. And there was a big old, kerfuffle that I would like to see a book written on, right? And all that's there, and lessons from 4th, lessons from 3rd, lessons from 2nd, lessons from 1st, lessons straight back to Gary Gygax, right? And more lessons than any other tabletop role-playing game on the planet even has the ability to put in their game if they even wanted to, because nothing goes back. Nothing is the progenitor except D&D. So when it comes to D&D's rules, they are truly a stanchion of separation, right? They bring scale. They allow the game to scale literally from a $25 startup for 6 people, all the way up to a $10,000 hugely complex, mega game with 6 people at the table. Advantage, disadvantage, one of the most innovative, impacting mechanics ever to hit any tabletop role-playing game anywhere, right? And a compression of complexity and nested lessons from the most rich, robust, important, impacting tabletop role-playing game history that exists for any tabletop role-playing game in the world. D&D's rule set is uniquely special, right? And if you notice, it's so special, so it has so many benefits they can't even be listed in one video, right? It's incredible. I am a huge fan of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm a huge fan of everything that's been accomplished with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition's actual real real groundwork. And D&D's 5e's rules, they truly are special, and they are a stanchion of separation. That's my opinion. What do you think? what is your opinion on the 3 aspects I discussed today? Scaling, advantage, disadvantage, and also compression of complexity, and also nested lessons. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those topics. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.